Okay, welcome everyone. Today we will continue our Dao De Jing translation, reading, discussion. Okay, we will start from 68 and doing 69, and then so that's start from 68. If you have your translation, and please raise your hand, and we will read out loud different translation, and then Amang and I will share our translation and discuss. And please, for the first 1.5 hours, please focus on the chapter. Okay, and then after that, we can have more general discussion. So Kwang, thank you to raise your hand, always.
Okay, so translation by Professor Mose Roberts, stanza 68. Warriors who excel do not parade. Commanders who excel do not anger. Victors who excel don't lightly engage. Skilled managers of man are humble. This defines the power of no conflict, the way to manage man's strength, the union with heaven, the acme of old.
So excuse me, Kwang, what's the first line? The
Yes, the warriors who
warrior.
excel do
Okay,
not parade.
thank you. Uh, anyone have your version to Joe, please?
Okay, you can hear me okay?
Good.
Good. I'm reading Derek Lynn's translation, number 68. The great generals are not warlike. The great warriors do not get angry. Those who are good at defeating enemies do not engage them. Those who are good at managing people lower themselves. It is called the virtue of non contention. It is called the power of managing people. It is called being harmonious with heaven, the ultimate principle of the ancients.
Okay, anyone want to read other version of translation? Okay,
I believe Laura's raising her hand.
Laura? Okay.
You're on mute, Laura.
Yep. All right.
Right.
This is Ursula Le Guin, and number 68 starts, the best captain doesn't rush in front. The fiercest fighter doesn't bluster. The big winner isn't competing. The best boss takes a low footing. This is the power of the non-competition. This is the right use of ability. To follow heaven's lead has always been the best way.
Thank you, Laura.
Totally different.
Okay. I don't see that's that different, but we will see.
You're right. It's not totally different.
I think they're
Just-
all almost the same, in my opinion. Okay, so Amang, you want to read?
Yep. Chapter 68, not vying. Good officers don't use force. Good fighters don't get angry. Good winners don't engage. Good employers stay in low positions. This is the de of not vying. This is the power of using people. This is the ultimate ancient way of matching heaven.
Thank you, Amang. I think this one is very short, and I do see this one is continuous from 66, because 66 is talking about, okay, because he doesn't vie, so the world cannot vie against him. So look like it's a continue from here. And the 68 and the next one, 69, look like they, if we put this two chapter in the Sun Tzu's Art of War, it look like it match. Okay, look like you can. So look like these two chapter, the author's mind is about battlefield. So the first thing, that's why I ask the translator, because the words, let me enlarge the words in the chat, 善为士者, 士 in Confucius Analect, we sometimes translate as learned person, represent a certain level of aristocrat, the lowest level of aristocrat. In Confucius text, we will translate as learned person, learned people. Okay. Here will be a little bit difficult. I translate as officer, but since it's in the battlefield, and that's why sometimes you see the translate as a general, translate as a warrior, and I think that could be means some the commander or the captain in the battlefield. But I just try to be honored to the text, which is 士. So I think the way to translate, I translate as officer. So, and a little bit different would be I talk about good officer don't use force. The good fighter don't get angry.
Hi, what's this meeting being recorded for? Because I don't consent to being recorded.
Yeah, we will post on the chat, so you will see it. Okay. So anyway, the last one we will see a lot of difference because it called Pei Tian. Okay. So that we see. I translate as matching heaven. Okay. That's but the words pay. So we see different translation like union, harmonious, union, united with heaven, or union with heaven, harmonious with heaven, or following the heaven. That's a different translation. But I still choose the original meaning, the Chinese character pen. Pei means match. Okay. So I translate as this is the ultimate way of matching heaven. And then how do you match with heaven? That's your choice. Okay, you can say united, following, obeying, whatever, but the words is matching. So Aman, please. Yeah.
Thank you, Kevin. Or thank you, Jason. Excuse me. I'm multitasking here. Yeah, I think 68 is a more explicit version of this sort of soft power that's been talked about in previous chapters. Though it does feel like it's a direct response to, that's odd. Somehow I'm trying to come into the meeting.
So let me remove it. Yeah. Why remove you? Okay. Yeah, okay.
I don't know why, but there we go. Sorry about that.
Where's this being posted? I never got my question answered about that.
I'm sorry. We are being posted on YouTube, and we're taking. You want to raise your hand to actually speak in the meeting?
Okay, I just wanted to say, like, could I have my face blurred out in the YouTube video?
You're going to need to silence yourself until you raise your hand, or I'll need to remove you.
Okay, let's continue.
Yeah. Excuse me. So, weird day. The art of war is very explicit in stating that the best outcome that any leader can hope for in a conflict is not engaging in the conflict. But then the text goes on to lay out how to engage in that necessary evil, as it were. Here, he sort of takes that first conceit of not engaging in conflict and sort of strings it out further so that the reader can understand, sorry, too many multitasks, so that the reader can understand that this doesn't just extend into the realm of warfare. This extends into the realm of any conflict, any sort of engagement that's contest, which is why the idea of vying is really important, is central to these. Jason mentioned this word "sure" as being used in Confucian text as sort of an elite literati, someone with book learning. Here, I think, because this is a direct response to the art of war, the idea of an officer really fits well, because that's the learned warrior, as it were. And that's kind of his first line of engagement with this. But then he speaks to the fighter who's just out there on the field trying to win. And then it goes to anyone engaged in any contest, reminding them that just going in with that intention of trying to come in first, you're kind of setting yourself up for a fall. If not the first time, eventually you will be setting yourself up for a fall. And so better to not vie. That doesn't mean you can't compete. It just means don't compete with your winning being the only and ultimate goal.
Okay, thank you, Amon. So let's have a discussion. If you have any question, comment, please raise your hand. So no comment. Seems it's easy. Kwang, please. Thank you.
Yes, so I want to say about the last line, the union with heaven, or to be exact, if we use a Chinese word, pei tian, meaning matching with heaven, or to be on par with heaven, because to pay means to be matched with someone in terms of marriage. So here we go back to a very Taoist, or even Chinese, I would say, because even the Confucianists have that kind of ideas, meaning that you are a match for heaven. Okay, once again, you know, I think that those who are regular this group know that one of my catchphrases is the infinite awareness, and that the thread running through the Tao Te Ching is precisely how to be in that constant norm, and that constant norm have been mentioned in stanza 52 for those who have a good memory. And here it's a little bit, I would say, the practical result of to be in the constant norm. If you're truly in that infinite awareness, in that constant norm, the practical political result would be that precisely uh, you would be a true warrior. Warriors who excel do not parade. Since it's not very long, I will read it again. Commanders who excel do not anger, meaning who are truly in the constant norm. Pei Tian, matching heaven. Victors who excel don't lightly engage. Skilled managers of man are humble. This defines the power of no conflict, the way to manage man's strength, the union with heaven, Pei Tian, the acme of old. So here, within Chinese civilization, the notion of gu, old, is often used as something which is exemplary, okay? Because the exemplars are always from old times. And all old can be understood too as something of the timeless dimension, of the being dimension, of the infinite awareness dimension precisely. And I want to mention a small historical detail that the professor Most Roberts, the guy who created the translation that I'm reading, uh, that might be interesting. Okay, because for him, well, he mentioned that Gu, old or ancient, appears in line 7 in some texts, this word is used 62 times on its own in the Laozi or the Tao Te Ching, and another 13 times in combination with another word. So if we add the two, 62 plus 13 is 75. Okay, and we have 81 stanza. So in almost all stanza, apparently. Such frequency marks the author's repeated gazing back to a remote time when the ills and evils he describes did not exist. Gu may refer to a pre-Zhao, meaning Zhao, once again, the dynasty which ruled China between 1046 BCE and 256. So it was before 1056. 1046 BCE, so to a pre-Zhou period, or simply to an imagined time of simplicity. Lao Tzu may have lived and written in the kingdom of Chu, which had roots in the Shang and maintained a tradition of resisting Zhou power. Okay, so the Shang dynasty ruled between 1600 BCE to 1046 BCE. So it is true that the Zhou royal house or the Qi royal house, the Zhou dynasty, has been at the root mostly of what we call Confucianism. And it is not so absurd than to consider Taoism might be the control philosophical expression of the dynasty just before the Zhou, who has been precisely destroyed by the Zhou. I prefer a more philosophical interpretation in terms of timelessness and being, as opposed to becoming and to the phenomena. But that historical note is not completely absurd. So that's why I wanted to mention it to you. I stop here.
Thank you, Guang. Mark, please.
Thanks, Jason, and thanks for that history lesson, Quan. Just the idea of using people. I know it comes up explicitly in your translation. And just to make clear what we don't mean here, we don't mean some violation of the Kantian imperative to treat people only as an end in themselves and never as a means. So does this deserve any clarification here?
Thank you, Mark. I think that's a very good question. I've been debating. I think most of translation as employment. Okay, and then I do make aware of this situation, so I make a conscious decision to using people instead of employment, which is modern time. Great that you mentioned about Kantian concept of treat people as a mean of the end. I have to say the author probably talk about treat people as the means, not the end, because they are using people. But that's not totally evil, because during that time, if you thinking about the officer, and even Confucius probably more on using the people. Okay, of course, also take care of the people, but that's my understanding. So that's why I don't want to see it sounds too modern on that. But it's debatable. Let's put it this way. Yeah, I just want to say I make a consciously decision on that, and I know it's questionable. Thank you to give me an opportunity to talk about this. Among, you have something to...
Actually, let Yulia go first. I'll get a little etymology in here.
Okay, thank you. Yulia, please.
Hi, sorry, I think I raised my hand too early. Can you come back to me? There's something I'm looking up that I want to share. Just, you can come back.
So Among, you go first.
But I could absolutely multitask here. So to address Mark's question about the Kantian imperative, non-existent in ancient China. This was not necessarily a concept that people took as rote. It was more of a society of everything, everyone has their use. And the administrator, the executive in ancient China, was in charge of making sure that those uses were effective in creating a harmonious living arrangement for everyone around them. What the Tao Te Ching is saying here, though, is not to use people by force, not to get angry with them, not to fight with them to win your way with them. In fact, you could literally reread each of those first few stanzas or, passages, sentences, and that is what it's saying. Good officers don't use force. Good fighters don't get angry. Good winners don't engage. So how does that translate into this is how to use people well, or the power of using people? Well, the power of using people is letting a thing do its natural course, being its natural self. And so if you have someone who is naturally inclined to I don't know, pick a hobby beyond farming, you know, a tile producer, somebody who is just inclined to do it. They're good at it. They like doing it all the time. You don't want to conscript that guy into your army and send him off to war. You want him there in your village building tiles for the people who aren't going to war, for the town that is the sacrosanct interest of that executor. And so, although not Kantian, it is a directive to be very laissez-faire with letting people get on with their business by you not imposing yourself upon them, not vying with them. That's what I wanted to say. And I was going to actually put the etymology of yong, which is the word use, that is in that phrase in the chat. I'll get back to that after I finish.
Then you are mom. So I think that when I hear you I heard you talking about this. Probably anyone can suggest a better neutral term on that, because using probably in today's English probably a little bit imply abusing something like this. I'm not sure, but if anyone have a better suggestion or better word, and welcome to suggest, because we are improving all the time. We try to improve all the time. So
I'm ready. Sorry about
no,
earlier.
Yulia, please. Yeah, go ahead.
This is actually exactly what Aman was just saying. This is in the commentary. I'm using the Red Pine translation, and he offers a commentator who says, even though our wisdom and power might surpass that of others, we should act as if we possess neither. By making ourselves lower than others, we can use their wisdom and power as our own. Thus, we can win without taking up arms, without getting angry, and without making enemies. By using the virtue of non-aggression and the power of others, we are like heaven, which overcomes without fighting and reaches its goal without moving. I thought that was a good, useful quote.
Thank you, Yulia. Huang, please.
Okay, here maybe the notion of Kantian imperative is maybe not something which is a concept within Chinese civilization. I think it is much more the concept of harmony. And precisely when I go back to Pei Tian, because I think that those two words of the last line are essential. Pei Tian means to match heaven or matching heaven, meaning that I always oppose the understanding of the lower trigram versus the understanding of the upper trigram. If you are skillful and you are managing people, okay, maybe instead of using managing would be a more modern word, or simply organizing people. If you have the understanding of the lower trigram, maybe you don't have a love or a awareness in your heart and your soul, but you will be skillful and enough to be to use the soft manner rather than the violent methods, because most of the time we know that it's much better to interact with people in a soft way, because we all know that it's much easier to get results from people when we interact in a soft way with them, especially if we are in a superior hierarchical position. Okay, it's a basic psychology. So that's what I call the lower trigram understanding, okay, to be skillful. But there is, I think, the upper trigram understanding, meaning that you truly have a ziran, a spontaneous true awareness in your heart and your soul that would make you soft spontaneously with people as a result of who you truly are at the level of being, and not because you want to be skillful. And there, the question of using people or not using them simply doesn't exist, because if you're truly in the upper trigram, and meaning you have the true being, the true infinite awareness in your soul, you will simply naturally be nice and kind and having considerations for others without necessarily making the distinctions of uh, the person as a means or the person as an end by himself or by herself, okay? Because you would spontaneously take the people as an end by themselves if you are truly in infinite awareness. So the question of making conceptual distinction simply doesn't exist. I stop here.
Thank you, Kwang. Any other comment on this one? No, then we probably can move to next chapter. I just put a little bit in the chat here because we are talking about yong, okay, as using, and I think the thing is operating, right? So that's why in the next chapter 69, it starts with yong being using military, or I translate as a military operation. So that's the part I try to balance. Let's put it this way. So I'm not sure. Operation people sounds good. Operating people sounds very strange. That's why I use it, using people. Before we go to 69, Mark, you have any comment on this one?
I guess my question is about pacifism. And I always kind of assume that there was a pacifist streak, or that Taoism was pacifist. And so do we have to, I mean, is that right? Or is it an oversimplification?
Let's have Amang respond.
Thank you. I have to. It's a common misnomer, and it is inclined towards pacifism, but not pacifism at any cost. There's a way to respond that is appropriate to things, and that sort of response is absolutely meant to be commensurate with what it is you're responding to. So can you be passive when you're drowning? Even sure, but that's not exactly going with the flow. That's letting the flow overwhelm you. you need to swim. You just don't need to swim upstream. Taoism's real sort of thrust is to be economical with your efforts, to be never sort of at the forefront of action, be a good responder to the situation, the opportunity that presents itself. Don't try and orchestrate the opportunity. And herein lies a little bit of the difference between Taoism and the art of war, and where this fine distinction probably comes out in these chapters. The art of war does extol the virtue of nonviolence, of non-engagement, but then goes on to talk about setting a stage so that if you do, you have overwhelming odds of success, as if that can be absolutely assured in every engagement. The Taoist approach to that is you can't account for every variable. A horse can throw a shoe, and I think we went through that whole sort of turn of events, that sort of, butterfly effect a few chapters back. And because you can't account for that, the best you can do is be sensitive to it when it happens and have the most appropriate response, which will be your natural response on that account. The example I love to give of this is I am not an aggressive driver because I do a lot of commuting. I am 60 miles an hour in the right-hand lane. I drive like the grandfather I am. But if somebody hits their brakes in front of me, I don't just gently pump, I yank the wheel. I let my body's reaction to so much time having done this act of its own nature. If it's appropriate that I slam my brakes, I slam my brakes. If it's appropriate, I turn my wheel hard, I turn my wheel hard. I react in the way that preserves my, physical well-being, but isn't necessarily a passive response to a situation. It could be a very active response. And the natural response that follows, which could be, shouting at my windshield for 30 seconds to blow off a lot of adrenaline. That too is a natural response, just as long as I don't carry that, to the gas station when I get out.
Yeah, thank you, Aman. To Mark's question about pacifism, okay, my short answer would be yes, but I'm not sure what pacifism has a bad meaning, or in today's English is a negative meaning, probably more negative than positive meaning. So in this case, I will say positive pacifism. Okay, it is difficult, but you just have to read the text to feel it. But in the flavor, they have the passive intention, okay, on that. So that's put this way. Okay. Huang, you may have a better answer. Thank you.
I would like to suggest once again, I know that I'm repeating myself, but I think that it's one of the keys to understanding the Laozi, the Tao Te Ching. Pacifism is an ism, okay? So it's a concept. Everything that is a concept, a notions, is of the lower trigram, okay? Second line, intellect. Third line, social sophistication. So once again, I'm sorry to bother everyone with my parrot-like behavior, but the Tao Te Ching is about the infinite behavior. So when you are in infinite behavior or in the upper trigram, the answer is always an insight, an intuition, a spontaneous shining forth of the right answer that is needed in a specific situation, a specific configuration. So the Tao Te Ching, and I'm afraid that the way I would explain it would sound a little bit like a concept, if there is a concept, is an invitation to infinite awareness in each specific and practical situation. So it doesn't invite to pacifism. It doesn't invite to a warlike attitude. It invites to awareness of what is truly needed as the right answer or the spontaneous answer in a given situation. Meaning that in certain situations, sadly, it is the only way to solve the situation is to go to war. In other situations, it's not to go to war. So you don't have, how can I say it? You don't have to be obsessed with a concept because there is no fixed answer. And it is true that nowadays pacifism is rather used to identify people who are too obsessed by peace to the extent that they wouldn't provoke war because they are so obsessed by peace. Because some sadly, one of the best way, not the best way, to provoke people to attack you is to appear weak or to appear completely obsessed with the idea or the concept not to go to war. I stop here.
Thank you, Kwang. So let's move on to 69. Anyone want to read? So the title I have is military operation. So today if you jump in today without joining other section, you might think we are doing art of war, but it's not. Okay, Huang, please.
Okay, so translation by Professor Mose Roberts, stanza 69. Those who wage war often say we prefer response to invitation. The span withdrawn to the inch gained. This is formation that does not go forward, deflection with hand unraised, the firm grip that holds no sword, and the thrust that cannot be countered. But having no foe is the greatest threat. It leads to the loss of our triple treasure. Once battle is joined, who gives way wins.
Oh, okay, thank you. Who else want to read your version? Joe, you want to read Derek Lin's? Joe, please.
You're on mute, Joe.
Yeah, sorry about that. In using the military, there is a saying, I dare not be the host, but prefer to be the guest. I dare not advance an inch, but prefer to withdraw a foot. This is called marching in formation without formation, raising arms without arms, grappling enemies without enemies, holding weapons without weapons. There is no greater disaster than to underestimate the enemy. Underestimating the enemy almost made me lose my treasures. So when evenly matched armies meet, the side that is compassionate shall win.
Thank you, Joe. Kwang, you want to read another version or?
No.
Oh, that's the old hand.
Oh, yes, I'm sorry. I should
Okay,
have
I can read the
lower.
Okay, Mark, please.
Lao. The strategists have a saying, I dare not play the host, but play the guest. I dare not advance an inch, but retreat a foot instead. This is known as marching forward when there is no road, rolling up one's sleeves when there is no arm, dragging one's adversary by force when there is no adversary, and taking up arms when there are no arms. There is no disaster greater than taking on an enemy too easily. So doing nearly cost me my treasure. Thus, of two sides raising arms against each other, it is the one that is sorrow-stricken that wins.
Thank you, Mark.
And I'm sorry, Mark, whose translation was that?
DC.
Yeah, it's DC Lao, I believe.
Yeah,
LAQ.
that's DC though. Yeah, I kind of like hear it. I probably know that's DC though. Let me see. Hold on, just let me. I lost my.
I'll go ahead and read while you're getting it up on the screen. Okay, Jason?
Yeah, it's here. Just 1 minute here. Okay. Yeah.
It takes my
69.
screen when. Just a moment. There we are. Chapter 69, Military Operation. The maxim of military operation is, I dare not act as a host, but prefer to act as a guest. I dare not advance an inch, but prefer to retreat a foot. This is called marching without formation, taking without using arms, fighting without facing enemies, and arming without holding weapons. There's no greater disaster than taking the enemy lightly. Taking the enemy lightly could cause the loss of my teachings on the three treasures. Therefore, when two evenly matched armies meet, the army that mourns, prepares for the worst, shall win.
Thank you, Amam. Here I put the blue text here because the Chinese text here say 轻敌击上五宝. So the reason I put Amam and I have the, it's hard to say disagree, but basically this text can have the two interpretation, okay, based on the Chinese text. The one in the here I write as taking the enemy lightly will cause the loss of my treasure. Okay, so here I put the three treasure. If you go back to chapter 67, the author talking about six treasure, right? The what's that? The sympathy or what do I translate? The compassion and preservation and the dare not to be the first in the world, right? So that's the three treasure. So one way to read this text is read as a warning, right? If you take the enemy lightly, then you could cause to lose what I taught about the three treasure. Another way to read it, because the Chinese text has no tense, okay, so we don't know he talking about past or future or present. So it could take us taking the enemy too light, almost caused the loss of my three treasure. That means the author is talking about his own experience or what he has seen before. Okay, so it's, I don't know, you want to see that's an important difference or not, but that's the decision you can make. But I just try to show two way of understanding this text. So personally, I would prefer the first interpretation because I do not see I do not expect the author is talking about his past experience because all the text or the 81 chapter, I don't see any place the author is talking about his own experience. Well, except I think chapter 19 talk about his retirement or something. Okay, that could be the case, but I will assume it's not talking about his own experience. Another thing I'd like to talk about is I find out this text is very, if you read it in Chinese, it's very poetic. And in some way, I try to preserve this tone, okay? Because the Chinese uses is use some opposite thing. You want to move forward, but you have to backward. You want to fight, but you should not face enemy. You arm yourself, but you don't grab the weapon. So in the Chinese text, you say 行无形，攘无备，人无敌，执无兵. So that's why I translate as marching without formation, taking without using arm. Okay, 攘无备 means arm, right? Fighting, okay, 扔, okay, we can see as fighting without facing enemy, 无敌, okay. 执无兵, right? 兵 means weapon. So arming, okay, holding something, but not the weapon. So that's the tone the author tried to present, similar to the previous one, right? Talking about if you want to lead the people, okay, manage the people, you should stay in the low position. You want to fight, don't get angry. You want to win, okay, good winner, don't engage, okay. This kind of tone, okay, that's the text. Finally, it's a thing we probably can discuss is, I think all the translation doing the similar way is the last line, right? Therefore, when two evenly matched army meet, the army that mourns shall win, right? So I think I heard many different translators, they all translate in this way, but the big question is why the army that mourns shall win, right? Why? So I put a parenthesis. I assume because the army that mourn means they probably prepare for the worst. Okay, that's why they will win. But that's my interpretation. And then you probably have your own thought or something. But that's we can discuss. Anyway, thank you. Aman, please.
Thank you, Jason. And once again, I am always flattered when my offering is still retained in the translation, because these two ways of interpreting this underlying text here are both equally viable. They're both, the real confusion or the real sort of hinge of it is that last two words, wobao, which my treasure, that makes this a statement of personal, it makes it a personal statement, but it could be a personal statement only in as much as it's abstracting what those treasures are, that they are my teachings. And therefore, the idea that this could be an outcome of losing my teachings, that is a totally viable way of understanding it. But if you read it as a sort of biography or confessional almost, it does make it very unique within the Tao Te Ching, because it's one of the very rare occasions Laozi would express anything about his own existence, let alone something that sort of almost rises to the level of a mistake. I personally like that interpretation for a very simple reason, and that is the Tao Te Ching is very different than almost every other text out there. But self-abasement is not something the Chinese scholar was known for. other than in their introduction, your humble servant, he who is not worthy, yada, yada, yada. That's kind of boilerplate how you introduce something you're writing in ancient Chinese. But then you go on to express your case full-throatedly and without making, allusions to I could have been wrong or maybe I'm wrong about this. This is kind of interesting because if it's a confessional, it's a confessional of some mistake made by Lao Tzu and the consequences of that mistake, almost abandoning his own teachings, abandoning his three treasures. And if you put that into the context of the overall passage, taking my enemy too lightly nearly cost me my three treasures. What would that mean? That would mean Lao Tzu didn't practice what he preached at one point. That the impulse, the inclination to get swept up and to be, the competent military leader, to be the one who strives to achieve, to be the one to, overcame him. And that could be that he just sort of dismissed his enemy's ability and then was overwhelmed with it. Or it could mean, as in the DC Lao translation, that he met an enemy that could be treated lightly, and that caused him the hubris of forgetting his own teachings. Either way, I find the confessional sort of reading of it very fascinating, but not reading it in that way, reading it in the abstract sort of didactic lessons that he's been parsing out throughout the text. Then what he's saying is you could very easily overestimate yourself. And if you do, that's when you fall right off the cliff of forgetting the very fundamental teachings, the Sambao, the three treasures that I have taught you about compassion, economy, and not daring not to be first before the world. And then he brings it home with this interesting idea of evenly matched. It's the army that mourns that shall win. The army that really has the compassion to understand the stakes of what is happening is the army that will win. Why would that be true? Well, you could say in a practical sense, because they're already mourning their own deaths, and somebody unafraid of death is an undefeatable opponent. That people have said that's the idea of suicide bombing, unfortunately. You could say that it's because the army that treats this with the gravity of something like a funeral and sees the humanity of the other side will win because they'll stop before they make themselves monstrous in their enemy's eyes. The amount of ways this can be read are just legion and fun to sort of parse out. But I invite you all to think really deeply about the multiple levels of meaning and realize that in the original Chinese, all of those meanings would be available to the reader to interpret and then reinterpret and reinterpret upon reading it each time through a slightly new lens or new hermeneutic.
Thank you, Amam. Let's go to Madeline. You have a question, comment?
Yeah, those lines, I think taking the enemy too lightly. You had the line in black and then the line in blue.
Yeah.
So one was, can you put that back up on the screen for a moment? There we go. Okay, so the first one is the future tense, and the second one is the past tense.
Yeah.
What if you balanced it in the middle and said taking the enemy lightly causes the loss of?
Yeah, you can do this way. but because the Chinese has no tense. Here the Chinese readers 轻敌机上五宝. So in Chinese text, if you want to know the tense, you need to figure out the tone. Okay, so this tone sounds like past. Okay, I think that's why Amman say, well, that's past. Okay, that's past experience, but it doesn't fit to the entire text, in my opinion. Okay, so that's why I have this way. And then if you talk about to the present tense, just kind of totally neutral, that's another way to do it. I will have no opposing on that. I basically just want to let everyone knows you can read it in a different way.
Yeah, just to add to that, usually if you want to be specific, this happened, this is about to happen, or this is happening, you put that specifically in the text by saying, before blah, 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 or now, blah, 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 or tomorrow, or in a year or many years. You make it explicit in most Chinese language, and it's not here. That
Yeah,
lack
but
of explicit makes it really interesting to be able to interpret.
yeah, and then you use the words 几, okay, that means almost. So in my another way to understand, somebody say almost, I almost lost my balance. That means, I almost lost $5,000. That I think, I would not say in the future I will almost lost something, or I will almost something happen. So that's just have to figure out. And unfortunately, we don't have, the text is not long enough to let people figure out. And then that's why, I put both on that. Luckily, we don't have too many of this kind of problem so far. We have a few hands up. I see we have Kwang, Paul, and Kevin. Okay, thank you.
Okay, do I go?
Yeah, please. Yeah, Kwang.
Okay, so I suggest that stanza 69 is divided in three parts. Okay, the first part is formed by the first three lines. Those who wage war often say we prefer response to invitation, the span withdrawn to the inch gain. I have to admit that Professor Roberts' translation is a little bit strange, but I understand what he means. Okay,
Yeah.
he means that it is better to be on the defensive than to be on the attack. Okay, so I would say that here we have the Chinese way or the Taoist way to state the very general principle of war, meaning si vis pacem para bellum in Latin, meaning if you want peace, you have to be prepared for war. And the title of stanza 69 is precisely Yongping. Okay, Yongping, once again, to use the military, or if I prefer to say on military affairs. Okay, Yongping. So the first three lines is about the big concept or the big principle. Si vis pacem para bellum, if you want peace, you have to be prepared for war, because if there's something in history that we know that will always invite aggression, is when you appear weak. That is absolutely a obvious thing. And the second part of the stanza 69, in my opinion, is formed by the next four lines. This is formation that does not go forward, deflection with hand unraised, the firm grip that holds no sword, and the thrust that cannot be countered. So here it is a complement, a promotion of the soft strategy. Okay, once again, the exaltation of the defense position rather than the attacking position. And the last three lines, but having no foe is the greatest threat. It leads to the loss of our triple treasure. Once battle is joined, who gives way wins. And here I don't have a very strong, I'm not adamant about the past or the present, about the last three lines, but I think that it can be read as a general principle, okay? Meaning that if you don't have, if you have no enemy, you will be led to complacency, okay? And if you are led to complacency, most of the time you will lose the three major psychological qualities, which are precisely compassion, frugality or economy, and what I would call a soft leadership, right? So in that case, I tend rather to see it as the enunciation of a general principle, even if the what I would call the autobiographical interpretation is not wrong. But I am not. I have no strong position on that. Um, and let's not forget also that a defensive psychology is essential for survival. A point that that is made directly in one of the line, warning against self-confident disdain of an enemy. So Mencius' famous formulation is, without enemy kingdoms and external dangers, the state will fall. So too many enemies can be very bad, but not enough enemy, of course, will invite to complacency. So and also I want to finish with the fact that it is the stanza 69 is the absolute proof that Taoism is not fundamentally pacifist doctrine, okay? Because there is a specific stanza on military affairs, this one. And I would also say that 67, 68, 69 are really interesting because it is like a very synthetic in a nutshell. If you put those three stanzas together, once again, 67, 68, and 69, it would be a summary of the Sun Tzu. I stop here.
Okay, just wait. Sorry to interrupt. I think if you add the 66 together, probably also makes sense to put in the Junzi because you talk about not vying. So, okay, that's
Yes,
my
yes,
opinion. Okay,
yes.
Kwang, just
I
one.
agree.
Yeah, one thing I'd like to disagree or let's say this share my idea. It really depends on how we read the first line. Okay, the host and the guest, right? So what I'm reading just opposite to what you are reading. Okay, to me, host is in defense, guest is in offense, right? Because you are the host, you are staying in my home. You are the guest. At the time, there's no internet, no phone call. So I don't know when is the guest coming. So whenever the guest comes, it's come. So to my understanding, the guest and the host probably just opposite than what you are talking about.
I
Because
think
the
that there,
guest is on offense side, host is on the defense side. But I know that's
I,
they have a different way to talk
but
about this. In the battlefield, you may say host is the one active, proactive to attack, and guest is the one who defend. But you know, I just want to say probably can have a different meaning, okay, in the host and the guest, and these
but
two different meaning. Yeah.
I think that maybe there's a misunderstanding because I think like you, Jason, on this one. Uh, we prefer response to invitation. So we prefer to be on the host side than the guest side. So we prefer defense to attack we agree on this one, Jason.
Okay, so anyway, I just said the guest and the host and the guest concept. Okay, yeah. So when you read, any English reader read this one, please just read the host and the guest and use your own understanding. What's the meaning of a host and the guest? So I think that's my point. Paul and Kevin, they matter.
Thanks everyone. And Jason, before I make my point, I need one clarification. Tell me how you came up with the titles again. Like, is military operation right in there in the Chinese, or did you pick something that was a summary, or what?
Okay, sorry, I have to explain that. That's traditional, they have the title on that. Okay, I didn't put the title, and a lot of time, I disagree on the title. But
Okay, good.
they have the title on that. I decide to honor it. For example,
Okay.
not violin. I think the same title appeared twice. Okay, so I don't know the logic. Before I put my own title, but then I find out they have the traditional have the title on that. So
Yeah.
just follow it.
Because I want to thank you, because that gives me license to make the point I feel driven to make, which is because it's so, to me, strange that this writer would talk about being able to lose 3 treasures in a military complex that are really existential treasures, if I understand it. It's like, oh, I'm losing infinite awareness to the enemy. It makes no sense. Therefore, the whole thing is metaphorical, I propose, like jihad in the Muslim Quran. And it starts out with an analogy, with the military people do this. And then it uses that metaphorically to talk about a different kind of a struggle. I just want to propose that, because otherwise I can't make sense of it, honestly.
Oh yeah, I think that's the purpose. You can make any kind of metaphor, but me as a translator, right? I need to be honest what the word they use, and then you can read as a metaphorical. Yeah.
But do you see a contradiction like I do, or am I missing something? That if the 3 treasures are part of the teachings, how can they be taken away militarily?
That's why I said that's a warning. Okay, that could be a warning, right? It's almost lost my treasure. Okay, almost means you didn't lose it. Okay, you almost, because you take the enemy lightly. Okay, so that's the way I see it. Okay, so you don't have to agree, but anyway, you know, that's the beauty, or you will say the problem of this text, because nobody for 1,000 years, nobody can fix, okay, what's meaning, what that means. So that means also good. You are the first time reader, or you spend your whole life on that, we're all equal, and we can argue, you know.
Jason, if I may interrupt, I have
Yeah,
the
please.
pretension that I can give a very clear answer to Paul.
Okay, please.
Here, Paul, it is not that the military enemy will take our treasure. Okay, I read the last 3 lines of the Roberts translation. But having no foe is the greatest threat. It leads to the loss of our triple treasure, in the sense that if you have no enemies, you wouldn't, most of the time, you will become complacent. And if you become complacent, you will neglect to nurture epistemologically the qualities of soft leadership, of frugality, and of compassion. In that sense, not that the enemy is attacking me so that I will lose something in my mind, but the fact that if I don't have enemies, I wouldn't be complacent, and being complacent, I will not nurture those qualities. In that sense, I can lose the 3 treasure in my mind if I don't have enemies. That is the meaning of those 2 lines.
Okay, but that is based on a translation that is not Jason's. And I feel like Jason will say that's a bit of a leap that Dr. Moss Roberts, but maybe I agree with his translation is all I'm saying.
Yes. But Jason, what did you translate for those two lines? I'm sorry, I have been
let
absent-minded.
me show you one more time. Okay.
Yeah,
Which line? This line, right?
the last two lines. Yeah.
This line. You mean this?
Okay.
This one?
There's okay, yeah, but Jason translated in the same meaning. There is no disaster greater than taking the enemy lightly. Having no enemy or taking the enemy lightly is, let's say, existentially equivalent. And taking the enemy lightly could cause the loss of my teachings of the three treasures, or the cause the loss of my three treasure. Well, I think, well, with all due respect, I think that Jason translated the core meaning that is absolutely equivalent to Professor Roberts' meaning.
Well, enemy lightly is not no enemy, but okay, I hear what you're saying.
Okay,
Yeah,
so
well-
okay, so okay. Since I'm showing my screen here, one thing I also like to show here, that's a probably illogical, okay? But reading Dao De Jing, sometimes you have to use your logical, but sometimes you have to use your imagination be illogical. So here is this. I keep talking about this one. Read it in Chinese, right? 形无形. Okay, so I translate as marching. When the military marching, you suppose you have a form, a formation, but it said marching without formation. 攘无备. Okay, I think another translation translates 攘 means take out your sleeve, but here I think it means take it. When in the mentions talking about somebody grab the ship, okay? So 攘 means taking something. So when you take something, you have to use your arm to take something. But it said taking without using arm, right? Then you can consider as fighting, okay, okay. But you fighting without facing enemy. 直 usually means arming, holding the weapon. I'm arming myself, but without holding weapon. So that's the key here. And you can say that's not possible, but that's what the text said here. So that's the part I like to point out. And then that's really up to everyone to decide how you're going to understand this one, you know. So we have Kevin and Mark, right? Oh, Kevin and Madeline. Madeline
Yep.
is yeah. Okay, Kevin, Madeline, and Mark. Kevin.
Okay, thank you, Jason and Aman. And my is first about back to the first Jung, a little bit work backward. Jung, I follow you translate operate or how about manage? Manage human resource, for example. Right, like modern days we use human resource, other
Yeah,
resources.
that's a human resources. Yes.
Yeah, that
But
way.
sometimes I don't want sounds too modern. That's another way.
Mm-hmm.
My principle. Yeah.
And for me, you know, back this is for Mark. I follow Paul question about how you know the passive and how can you compete. So for me, I would put it not why is why, not doing is doing with natural flow of universe, without unnecessary effort for resistance. A history I would give. I'm not sure it's accurate example. Look at Afghanistan war, the last 400 years from British, Soviet Union, US. It's so aggressive. What do we get? We know Afghanistan still poor, but we didn't get much from the Afghanistan war. And another one is a way out to think about our ways is we contemporary thinking, we normally like prioritize positivity, avoid of negativity. However, in engineer science, we think about risks and the negativity, stability, reliability. When you do a politician side, thinking is different. It's not just win a war. You need to persuade your internal people, all also external diplomacy. So that going to miscalculate the war. Among post that like Qindi, right? You if you know look down your enemy, like you're going to hurt. That's in the art of war. I'm going to read this. If you know your enemy, know yourself, you could win at least half of them. Okay, I'm going to pause here. Thank you.
Thank you, Kevin. We have a Madeline, right? Madeline.
Yeah, thanks. I really am enjoying this one, this translation and this discussion. It is, it's reminding me of that one that was basically the verse that said, "Do sweat the small stuff." In other words, get busy on it now before it spirals out of control. And so taking the enemy too lightly would be letting things go without attending to the details that you need to do now. And if you can foresee the consequences, in other words, to mourn, you would be using your compassion, frugality, and humility to forestall the very worst. But if you don't do that, if you take it too lightly, then you will lose those things because you'll be in a panic, you'll be angry, you'll be spending money you needn't have spent, whether it's on military supplies or on something else. And you will also have lost your humility because you'll have to put yourself first just in order to survive.
Thank you, Madeline. Among you.
Thank you. I'm going to use a little host prerogative here, because it's a robust discussion around this chapter. This is a chapter that challenges by no understatement. I want to read the commentary by Edmund Ryden, who's a Dao De Jing scholar, and it's a very short. It just says, "This chapter sounds like the lament of many a teacher. Wisdom is taught, but no one is interested in learning about it because it is hidden in what is very ordinary." To that, I also wanted to add, how is this a direct response to the art of war? Well, go to the art of war, chapter 11, verse 3, or book 11, verse 3. And the very opening line is, "In general, the Tao of being an intruder, uninvited visitor, is that when you are deep inside the foreign lands, you should concentrate your forces and make the host, the country you intrude, unable to resist." This kind of reconciles that visitor-host discussion about who's the aggressor, who's the defender. To be the host is to be in a position of defense because you're defending what is your home, what is your space. To be the intruder, visitor, almost a distinction without a difference, especially if you contextualize it to the ancient Chinese world, where somebody showing up in your front yard could be benevolent, could be there to slaughter you and your family and steal everything out of your larder. You wanted to put on your best face in case it was a little iffy one way or another. To get back to this, it's hidden in the ordinary, though. What is this passage saying? It's saying marching without formation, taking without using arms, fighting without facing an enemy. These are all subtly implied in the art of war. In advice like the greatest defeat or the greatest victory is to actually have the other side wholesale buy into what you're selling so that you don't have to fight at all and they just come onto your side. They wholeheartedly embrace what you're selling. That would be fighting without facing enemies. That would be taking without using arms. And that would be kind of what I call the London strategy of dealing with invasion. Fine, fine, you're here. Just settle down, come in, set up shop. There's enough room for everybody in this bloody city. That's been kind of London's attitude towards invaders for, I don't know, millennia or so. They come in, they assimilate. They come in, they assimilate. But then we get to this really vexing part about taking an enemy too lightly and losing those three treasures. Is this existential, like Paul suggests? Is this very almost medicinal, like what Quan is suggesting? Quan's suggestion of having no enemy leading you to complacency reminds me of the old Chinese medical phrase, long illness, long life, no illness, no life. The implication being when you have something to address all the time, you'll always be working on it. When you convince yourself, I'm fine, that's when your cholesterol catches up to you and you die, for an example. Or is there something else here? Something between the practical and sort of the existential or the ethereal? I think it can actually be viewed in both ways. If this is biography or if it's tutorial, either way, what it's saying is to face down something that you take at first blush as adversity, as beneath your consideration, not worthy of your full attention, then you invite the disaster of losing compassion. How did that work? Well, it's the 2-year-old who won't stop asking, or 3-year-old who won't stop asking why. You just get tired of it and you forget to be compassionate in the fact that they really don't know. And this is just how they are able to interact with you, by asking incessantly why. If you lose your compassion, you lose your patience, you lose the battle, and now you have a tantrum on your hands. Do you lose your economy? When you're facing down something that is an adverse situation, like brake lights all up ahead, do you just say, hell with it, I'm going in the HOV lane and I'm going to do 90 to make up for this lost time? Well, not only is that bad for your gas economy, it's also inviting, risk to you, but it also may mean you getting pulled over and costing you more time than if you just had the patience to wait out those brake lights in the first place. Economy of effort is essential and easy to lose when faced with adversity. And daring not to go first before the world. Can you entertain the notion that maybe what it is that got your heckles up, that got you so incensed, that got you seeing this as an enemy, that interpretation isn't empirical. It's going through your perceptive lens. Can you put yourself out of yourself long enough to entertain the notion that maybe there is another conceivable way of perceiving the situation, daring not to put your own interpretation first before the world? I absolutely love this chapter. I love the discussion that it sparks. It is a direct response to the art of war, but it's not a direct refutation of the art of war. More, it's all right, calling out your original idea. Let's tease that out to its full potentiality and see where could it really lead to. Yeah, so I now have taken way too much time. I'll turn it back over to you, Jason, to moderate, but we're probably getting into open discussion time if I'm not mistaken, yeah?
Yeah, probably. Okay, so Mark, please.
I really want to pick up where you left off, Iman, by you mentioned both not losing compassion and choosing not to put yourself first. Now, here's my question. It seems like the treasure that is mentioned here, is that or is it not related to the 3 treasures mentioned in chapter 67? The three treasures there were mercy, frugality, and not putting yourself first. So I think we can find at least two of these here in our chapter 69. Not putting yourself first. Maybe the idea of mercy can be related to the last line of those who mourn. And maybe we can even find frugality. So are these two chapters related?
Yeah, I would say absolutely. If anyone disagrees, please speak up before I go on a jag. Yeah, I would say he explicitly says about that this is about his treasure, Bao. And just, 2 chapters earlier, he was talking about Sambao, his 3 treasures. And so I think these are absolutely related. If you're looking for kind of direct evidence or direct, kind of indications, arming without holding weapons. We could call that parsimony, frugality, economy, not wasting resources. We could talk about compassion as that idea, or mercy, or, heartedness as the army that mourns. But you could also see it as fighting without facing enemies. Because if you have no enemy, if you're compassionate that they're not an enemy, then you have no conflict. And if you're looking at daring not to be first before the world, the army that mourns shall win. I can't think of a better example of you are already putting yourself in the position of funeral attendant, of not the glorifying victor, but the person who's got to clean up the battlefield afterwards. So yeah, I do think these are absolutely simpatico.
And also in 67, I think it says that mercy makes possible courage. So this would connect with the army that is going to win.
Yeah, thank you, Amang. Thank you, Mark. I think just like Kwang mentioned, right? And I 66, 67, 68, 69 sounds like they all talking about military operation. Okay, so it's reasonable to see this treasure, even it doesn't, the text doesn't mention it's a 3 treasure. It's reasonably to see it's a 3 treasure because you talk about, my translation talk about compassion, preservation, and the compassion is to be brave, right? And the preservation is to spread out, okay, 广, okay, and not to be the first in the world. This chapter doesn't say it's the military operation, but all these words, right? Brave, spread out, be the first, could happen in the military. That's very reasonable to tie these 2 texts together. But of course, it's not a rocket science. Okay, you have the way to reject it. For example, chapter 62, right? Talking about the Tao is the century of all things. It is the treasure, okay, for all good people. Okay, so 62 also talk about treasure, okay, but I translate it as a jewelry, okay, as a jewel, okay. So you can say, okay, almost lost my Tao because in chapter 62 talk about this. And I remember Kevin probably posts, if you search what's the Taoism treasure, okay, then this Taoism, if you understand as the religious Taoism, there will be Jing, Qi, Shen, okay, spirit, Qi, and your viral or something. Okay, so that's the 3. So you take a totally different direction, right? So or you can just take the Bao, the treasure, as it is, okay, something valuable, just get the total meaning. So you all can do this way. So that's why I put the parentheses on that. Probably I should take it out because that's the way. Usually I don't put that, but this one I just feel have a strong feeling, it's connected to this chapter. That's the reason. Yeah, thank you. Kwang, thank you.